And fantastic. All right, everyone, one and all 71 participants. Let's do this thing. Happy Thursday. Welcome to another lecture. Today, I hope each and one of you are doing fantastic. Grab that coffee, grab that snack, because we have some things to learn today. The thing we're learning is relationships in object relational mapping, which you heard last week, but it is take 2 this week. We get to learn extra. Also, for any small little disclaimer here, if you, let me open up that channel too. If you want to follow along in the lecture, I'm going to be using the GitHub that I posted in announcements. It's out there, so feel free to pull it up. I have not touched it, so we are going to be starting just like that today. She haven't seen it. Show you everything. Okay, cool. Yeah, so if you want to follow along, feel free to go ahead and clone that. If you haven't cloned it right now, you can do that during announcements. Don't want that many announcements, so you might just want to follow along, but up to you. All right, enough rambling. Let's get to it. Announcements. Like I said, we have so many announcements today. No announcements. I have nothing for you other than please work on assignment 4. Get to that, work through it. Again, if you don't have assignment 3, 2, or 1 absolutely completed, definitely get on that as well. We have a few lectures left. We're getting down to the wire. One more thing also on Monday, make sure you're here bright and early, aka 5:30 in the evening, because we're going to have a guest speaker. And it is not Greg. It is an actual guest speaker, so definitely come, because they're always great and full of information. Please come for that. All right, that is it for announcements. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. I feel like I need to tell you guys something. I don't know. Guess I don't. All right. You guys ready for this? All right. Let's talk about relationships. Yes, that awkward question. It's time for the talk. But we kind of had this conversation last week. We're going to be talking about a dog and their owner. So last time I showed you that typo on the slides. I really wanted to skip over these slides, but we're going to just review this so we talk about it. Last time, I'm sorry, you weren't my first class. My first class, I did have a typo in the past presentation. So this one is to make up for that and try to make up for my sins. But luckily I didn't make that mistake. I caught that last time, but we're going to still talk about it. We have a dog on the left, an owner on the right. If we don't remember our lefts and rights, this is left, that is right. And we are going to talk about perspectives. If we're looking at the owner's perspective towards a dog, we already talked about this. One owner can have many dogs. So an owner can have many dogs. So on the right-hand side, we can say the owner can have many. Well, on the left-hand side, in the dog's perspective, the dog can only have one owner. If you're trying to figure out another way to piece together relationships, if it's many to one or one to many, think of it in this perspective and read it from right to left. In this case, how is the dog related to the owner? It is right to left, aka many to one relationship. So the dog in this perspective would have a many to one relationship with the owner. So how exactly does that look? Let's bring up that dog entity. As always, we start that entity tag, public class dog. We bring in our properties. We bring in just those special annotations at the very top. So we tell it about the table, blah, blah, blah. Bring in a little bit more, that blank instructor, and then all the other stuff, those constructors, the getters and setters. But let's talk about what we just talked about. The relationship with the owner in the dog's perspective. In the conversation we just had, the dog was the left-hand side of that. Well, if we bring in that owner, this was the right-hand side. Again, we read right to left in this conversation. So what is the relationship exactly? I'll turn this one over to you all. What was that relationship between the dog and the owner from the dog's eyes? What kind of relationship?
One to many.
One to many.
Many to one. Many to one. Remember, we were reading right from left. Owner can have many, well, dog can have one. So it's a many to one.
What was the typo that you had?
It was just a mistake between one and many. So it was just flip-flopped in one part of the conversation last week. But we didn't talk about that one too much. I corrected it during the lecture. So looking at this, though, the relationship the dog has to the owner is a many to one. This is where people can get confused depending on the perspective that they're looking at. So that's why I wanted to do this, just to kind of give you one more piece to try to put these relationships together. So now we have the dog entity. Let's go and flip our point of view here. We have our owner on the left-hand side and our dog on the right-hand side. For the for the right-hand side for the dog can have only one owner. So we say one. The owner, on the other hand, can have many dogs. So therefore, we read right to left. So the relationship in the owner's perspective is a one-to-many relationship. So at least in my mind, and everyone's mind works differently, to me, it's always a little backwards to how these relationships are titled. So that's why I always say read right to left. Flip it for yourself, and we can create that one-to-many relationship here from the owner's perspective. So in that case, we bring in the owner's entity here. We have two. So we have to put in the annotation. Oh, we'll go ahead and hand this one over to you. What annotation sets up the primary key over the ID?
Add ID and
Add ID, very
value.
good. Well, I like that. You're getting ahead of me here. Add ID and add generated value do two different things, and we need to know what the separation is there. So what auto generates that primary key, as you already said it?
Add generated.
Very. I didn't know if you were going to say it or not. I was like, I'll just do it. You already said it. You already did the work. You wasted the breath. All good. Awesome. Add generated value. So generated value is the one that auto increments for our tables for this owner entity. Now, let's go ahead and bring in what we need to do. So the owner, like we said, can have many dogs. So it's going to be a list of dogs here. So what is the relationship between the owner here in its perspective and that list of dogs? What is the relationship?
Many to one.
Again, we got to flip it in our heads. I know it's always backwards. In this case, it's going to be one to many. It's going to be one to many because we have that list of dogs. We have that, it's got to be from the owner's perspective where it's right to left. So it's going to be a one to many relationship. And just to make sure that I am not blowing smoke, because like I said, I got this wrong last year, so I'm going to double check here. But for the owner, like we said in our dog class, for this one, it's a many to one. For this, or for our dog class, well, if it's in the owner, it's going to be a one to many. So basically, think of it this. If you're making a list here to hold contents that relates to another object, it's going to be a one to many. Because collections, aka lists, have to have the one to many annotation over it. So if you're looking for just a very simple way to remember this, if it's over a list, it's one to many. If you're doing the one to many or many to one decision. So that is my main point right there. Worst case scenario, you'll get an error down there, and if it doesn't work, just try the other one. It's a 50-50 shot, flip a coin if you really have to get down to the wire. But if it's over a list, it is going to be a one to many. All right. Any questions on that? Anything else that you all would want to talk about? Anything at all? All right. Then let's go ahead and continue our conversation about relationships that we had last week. All right. So our conversation was about a dog and a bone. In this conversation, we said that dogs get pretty vicious if another dog tries to take their bone. So in this kind of relationship, our dog pertains to a specific bone. So when it is a very specific object to what other object its perspective is in, that is called a one dog to one bone. It is a one-to-one relationship. So if you have one object that has to pertain to another object explicitly, it's going to be a one-to-one relationship. So bringing in our owner entity and bringing in our dog entity, we see also here that we have communication between our dog list, which is a one-to-many, and our owner, which is a many-to-one. What I really want to call out about these two entities and about this relationship that we have established in last lecture is that it is bidirectional. So that means that we're having conversations or sharing information between the owner and the dog. They are trading information back and forth. They have reference to each other. They are attached at the hip, if you will. So looking at this, the owner can access the dog information. Well, the dog can also access the owner information. This is awesome. This is bidirectional communication. This is fine because the dog wants to know who their owner is and the owner wants to know what their dogs are, and we want to get that information. But what I want to really call out here is that this is not always the case. Not all the times does an object need to know about the object that it's attached to and vice versa. Let's talk about that. We're going to go back to that dog and bone scenario. The dog really wants to know about that bone. Wants to know where it is, wants to know everything about it. How many chews does it have left in the Tootsie Pop center or something like that, whatever dogs care about with bones. But one thing that we need to talk about is that the bone doesn't care about what dog it belongs to. The bone is just an inanimate object. There's no good reason for the bone to know about the dog that it belongs to. The bone's just going to be there. So when this is the case, it has no reason to reciprocate that communication link. It doesn't need to know about the dog it belongs to. When this happens, this is called unidirectional connections here. This is a unidirectional connection between an object and another object that doesn't reciprocate. So just take that in for just a moment. And know that the conversation we're having right now is with bidirectional communication, unidirectional communication is a slight of a gray zone. And what do I mean by gray zone? It is all about what you think. It's about your opinion, how you structure your tables, how you structure your persistence layer, and also your application. What I'm trying to say is that if you can think of a reason for that bone to know about the dog, awesome. Then make it bidirectional communication. Because for some reason that bone needs to get on legs and know about that dog, that's okay. But in the example that I'm talking about right now, it does not. There's no reason that I see for that inanimate object, that bone, to know about my dog. So I'm gonna make it unidirectional communication between those two objects. So when you're actually implementing your own applications, whether it be in coding events, assignment 4, or when you get to liftoff and you're doing your projects, when you're designing your application, it all comes to you, how you want to implement communication. What you should always keep in mind when this comes about and you're designing your application is that you should always have a reason that an object should know about another object. There should be a reason why these objects are attached. It shouldn't be the conversation of, I just felt like it, and now I want them to know about each other. There should be a design implementation reason that you've attached these two objects. You don't want to have a lot of you don't want to have a lot of links out there. It gets very messy very fast. So in that case, that is why you don't want to do that. So when we're talking about this, we're going to bring back in that entity class we see there. And today we're going to be creating a bone class in order to really establish this unidirectional link. So on the left-hand side, we have our dog entity. We have our one-to-one relationship with the owner. That's not going to change. But we're going to be bringing in this new one-to-one relationship with the bone. So real quick, let's go ahead and design this bone class. Quick. Thank you for the call out, Melanie. I will go ahead and get that changed. That's my terrible English right there. All right, let's go ahead and focus on this new bone entity here. So inside this bone entity, we need to add some properties as always. Oh gosh. Let's see if I stop breaking. There you go. We'll have this bone class here, and we're gonna have an ID, berry spot, and a seasoning, because that's apparently what I chose when I was making these slides. And then we're gonna have the appropriate getters and setters as well as that empty constructor. Now, let's go ahead and hop over to IntelliJ and make this thing. I'm gonna go to new Java class and we're gonna create bone. And you all are gonna talk me through this because I wanna make sure that we are all still with each other here. So I'm gonna create bone. And the first thing I wanna do when I wanna create a new entity is do what to this class?
Add the annotation.
Where do I add it?
Above the class.
Above the class, awesome. So we're gonna say at entity, just like that, and it is JavaX persistence. That is what we need. Also, if you're, excuse me, clearly gonna stop talking about that. All right, after that entity, we have the public class bone, and then always when we have these kinds of entities, what is that very important property or field that we need to keep these things unique?
The ID.
The constructor.
ID.
Well, we need the constructor, I like that. But first, we start with class variables, go to constructors, and then methods. So we're gonna start at the class variables first. And I heard it out there. The variable we always need, the class variable we always need is the ID. And class variables are always with what kind of accessor?
Private.
Private.
There we go, I'm gonna go ahead and say private, and then int ID, awesome. We got that ID in there. What are those annotations, those magical annotations we need on top here?
The generated value.
At ID.
I'm gonna go ahead and do also generated value there too. Fantastic. All right, we put two more in there. We said private string berry spot. And then we said private string seasoning. Because why not? And then I heard that. Awesome job calling that. We always need those empty constructors. So I'm gonna say public bone empty constructor, open and close brackets, nothing else. And then the appropriate getters and setters. What I'm gonna do is right click here, generate getters and setters. So what I'm gonna do is select all of them. But what is the one getter or setter that I always need to remove or not have?
The ID.
The ID. We do not want to ever have set ID in our classes. Get that out of there. Once our ID is set, we want to keep it set. Fantastic. All right, we have our bone created. Now the bone's created, but what do we still need to do with it? It's one next thing we need to do. Anybody got an idea? If it's out there, is it attached to anything?
Are we mapping it?
We need to map it. Very good. Who are we mapping it to? Or not, we don't need to map, excuse me. I apologize for the term mapping. We need to connect it more so. We need to build the relationship, but who do we need to build the relationship with?
The dog.
Dog.
Exactly. We need to create a relationship with the dog. Awesome. So talk me through that. How am I going to build the relationship with that bone here?
It's one to many, right?
One-to-one.
It's a one.
So one-to-one. The dog wants only one bone. I'll go and put one-to-one here. But what do I still need?
Private bone. Bone.
Very good. Told you guys had to talk me through it here. All right. Awesome job. We have just successfully created a one-to-one relationship with our bone class. But the one thing I want to call out is that Microsoft needs to fix its bugs, and it is going to be unidirectional. We didn't include a one-to-one relationship in the bone back to the dog. So that's the one big thing I want to call out about this thing we just built. So let's go and hop over here, and we're going to go and run our application and see what happens. Well, this is building. Any questions? Questions from you all? Anything at all? Better ask it now. The coffee's hitting. All right. Well, no, it's still loading. You still got time. I should have restarted my computer because it's just been extra slow today. Here we go. Almost there. Awesome. I also want to call out one thing that happened in here. If you ever go through this giant set of just terminal stuff, you might see the word hibernate and then some text after it. what this is that we created that new bone entity. So it noticed that. Hibernate, when we started up the server, it looked at it, it's like, okay, cool, you created a bone entity. I'm gonna do something about that. So it does these 3 lines here. It creates the table bone for us. And it creates it with all those columns that we created in the entity. It also alters the table to create that bone ID as an integer. And then it looks like, oh, it also attaches that foreign key that we need from the dog class, because it's altering that table from the dog class over to the bone, or sorry, dog table over to the bone table. Trying to get my terms right. So for fun, let's go ahead and see what it did here. We're going to go up into our MySQL, refresh this awesome pet store database schema that we made, and look at what we got. Look at that, everybody. We got a bone table. Our dogs are going to be so happy. All right, so we got an ID, berry, spot, and seasoning. We're good there. We've created this connection. So we're A-okay. Let's continue on and see what we can actually do with this stuff. All right. So here, what I want to do, I forgot about this one. Oh, that's right. We also need a cascade. Oh, I always forget about the cascade stuff. Give me a second. This was in my notes, and that is what I'm missing today. I was like, okay, gotta get my cascades. Give me a second to get this guy. There we go. Unless anybody can answer the question of what cascade does. I just gotta get my memory out for that. There we go. There you are. I need, there it is. Oh, that's right. Okay. So it's just saying to go in or cascade to all. Oh, yes, we need to cascade all the properties in there. Okay, I apologize. You're absolutely right. My slides. When we do the one-to-one, it is good to add the cascade to cascade type all. This is a very specific part of the ORM of the Hibernate process. What we want to do is just cascade all of that information from the bone into the dog class. So I'm going to say is cascade equals cascade all. There we go. That will just share all of the properties there. So let me go and restart that. So if you're building a one-to-one, it is typically good to make sure we cascade that. Fantastic. It's a very small detail, nothing too big, but good to remember for our one-to-ones. All right, let's go back over here. Everything started up properly. We're gonna go and refresh and make sure that our dog class has that fun stuff. Also, we got a bone ID in there too. Got our dog ID, cool. There it is. Awesome. All right. Fantastic. So we are cascading all those properties, and I'm gonna go back here so I can actually get everything. Where's my Slack at? Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Okay. So we have our bones and we have our dogs. They have communication between each other. Awesome. But when we are actually out on the web and we're going to our website, we have multiple dogs that we actually need to show. So we have our dog shows where we can just see all of the dogs. Right now we have it on our homepage. We have multiple dogs that we can choose from. The other one we have after we go here, we can actually go and create a dog on our form. So we're on our homepage, we're seeing the dog, we go to our create form, like awesome, let's fill out this information to get another dog. And after you do all that, fantastic, you are now seeing your dog on that screen. Then you typically go back and you're going to see all your dogs again and go through the same process. This right here is the modern web. This is what a typical user is going to do on your web applications. They typically want to see a list of their information. They want to create or edit. We haven't really talked about edit too much, but they want to usually act or at least create their information, see that information that they created, and then go back to everything and maybe view it all later. So the part that we want to talk about today is the actual creation of this dog. We have this specific dog, but now we need to actually talk about how we're going to communicate with the main part that saves all this dog information that we just created. So we just created that dog with a dog ID number 3, little Fido there. If our controller is talking to our persistence layer and says, can I have the dog of ID number 3, which you've seen, we go and find it by ID. We ask our persistence layer, hey, can you give me that dog back to that specific ID? What happens with the situation where the dog does not actually exist within the database? So we're asking for a dog that does not exist. I want ID 100 or 200 or something that's not actually there. The controller is going to be basically the database responds saying, I don't have it. And the controller has no idea exactly what to do. And essentially we get a giant error when it comes to that. So if the persistence layer comes back and says, we don't have anything, we need to have something that actually helps us protect ourselves when the persistence layer comes back with nothing in hand. The way we actually protect ourselves against this is with a word you all saw in last lecture, so we can see that example, that word being optional. Optional is the keyword and also the type of data type we use to protect ourselves against the persistence layer coming back with nothing in hand, aka a null. This can happen, and it does happen quite often. People will ask for information that doesn't exist, and you need to be protected against it, otherwise your application will break. So to protect us against this specific case we just talked about, where that dog is not coming back, we need to add a few extra things to this optional keyword. That being pointy bracket and the data type we expected to get back. In this example, we're talking about the dog class. This right here will help us protect ourselves against persistence layer. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the actual optional itself. So it has 2 main methods that you all need to be very aware of. The first one is empty. We're checking if this optional, not the dog object, the optional is empty, meaning that what comes back from the persistence layer, again, is that optional, and saying, is there actually anything inside of here? Is there anything that was actually given back to us from the persistence layer? What it does is that if there is something there, it returns true. If there's nothing in hand, it returns false. So it's essentially a check in the box to see, okay, is there actually a dog that was returned? That's what isEmpty does. The second one is, okay, if there is something in the box, we need to somehow receive it from this optional, which leads me to my next method here. It's mydog.get. This actually returns the dog. Now, what does this actually mean? Optional is just the vessel that comes back from the persistence layer. There could or could not be a dog inside of that vessel. So that's why we use isEmpty to check to see if the dog is in that vessel. And if it is there, we go ahead and get it with .get. That's what these 2 methods are doing. So I'm going to pause here because this is very, very important. A lot of assignment for it, anytime you're talking to MySQL through Hibernate, these 2 methods and this optional are absolutely crucial. So any questions surrounding this? Anything at all? All right. So real quick, what I'm going to show you is from last week. I believe we're in the dog controller. And what we did is that we wanted to save a dog. But in order to do that, we needed to get the owner that we wanted to associate it with. So we found by ID, that owner ID. Remember, we talked to the owner repository. That owner repository is our communication line between our job application and our database, our owner table. We found the owner using the owner ID in the method find by ID and returned this, an optional. That's awesome. Great, we saw our owner come back. But again, it's in a vessel. So we need to check if the vessel is empty. If it is empty, we want to immediately get out of there and return back to whatever page that we were on, aka we are on the dog create page here. If it's not empty, we'll skip over this if statement, and then we just check for validation. This is from our validation days where we're seeing if we have any errors. If we have any errors, we will return back to that create page. If we have a dog in our vessel and no errors, then we actually get to do the fun stuff. We have to set our owner to whatever that owner is back from the database, and then we actually add the dog to the owner and then save the dog. So the main point of this is looking at these 4 lines we have here. We're using our optional to get information back from the database, and we have to double check that there's actually something there. With this specifically too, you're going to be using optionals when you're finding by ID, not necessarily when you're finding all. So that's one thing. If you're trying to find something specific, find by ID, that's when you're going to be using the optionals. All right. Any questions on that, looking at this code base? All right. And let's make this a little bit more tricky. It's gonna black out our chat. No, you didn't. Awesome. Now you work. All right. Let's bring back those pups. We got those pups as always. But in this case, instead of bones, we're bringing in that toy box that we talked about last week. Remember, with this dog and here, they can have this rope, but also Fido down there can also have the rope. They can play with the same toy. That's a-okay. Dogs can have different toys and also play with the other toys. So we have just this list of toys that dogs can either play with or not play with, and no one's gonna get mad at each other. This right here, because we have many dogs and many toys, is a many-to-many relationship. This is how a bunch of dogs and a bunch of toys can play to each other. This kind of relationship is used when you have 2 objects that don't really care if they're associated with each other. And it can have multiple associated with each other as well. So let's talk about this a little bit further. Let's bring in some code here. We're going to bring back in our dog entity as always. But in this case now, we're actually going to establish this relationship with a toy thing. So to do that, we say many-to-many and then a list of toys. Remember, if you're using any kind of many inside of your relationships, you're most likely you're going to be using a collection, aka a list, a group of stuff. So we say a list of toys. So we establish that relationship with a toy, but toy doesn't exist. So let's point our attention to a new public class toy here with entity. We're going to actually build that thing as well. We're going to have an ID in there and just a toy name. We're not going to get anything crazy there, and then an empty constructor. Fantastic. But remember, if you're trying to set up relationships in your database, you need to make sure you establish a relationship between your objects. So the next thing we want to do is say a many-to-many relationship here with dogs. So we say private list dogs on many-to-many. This right here establishes the relationship between the dog and the toy, as many as they want. This is a bidirectional communication between the toys and the dogs. We're doing this so we know that if we have just a rope toy, how many dogs like it, and we can know things about the dogs. Vice versa, if we have our dog information, we know all about the toys, what toys they like. So in this case, you could think of this as we want this bidirectional communication, so we have shopping data on rope toys or something like that. So we want to do a bidirectional communication here instead. Again, this is an ambiguous gray zone opinionated structure that I just created. Just know that bidirectional and unidirectional communication exist, and only do bidirectional if you have a reason, or only connect objects if you have a reason. Just don't do it on a whim. All right, so let's go ahead and build this toy class now. So I'm going to do this one a little bit faster because I already built one today. I'm going to call it toy. You already told me that to make this an entity, I need to add the entity annotation at the top. So entity is how we do that. And then always, 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 we start with our class variables at the top. We're going to say private int ID. And then after that, we put our annotations up there. I like to do that because I get away from a lot of red. So I like to put the stuff first and then do that. So then we said private, what was it, string toy name. Excuse me. And then after that, empty constructor. So we say public toy, open, close, empty constructor, just like that. And then all the appropriate getters and setters. So I right click, press generate, go to getter and setter, and both of those. And as always, you remove set ID because we do not want anyone to try to reset our ID to something different. Fantastic. So I created toy first because if I tried to associate it with toy and dog, it would turn red, and I don't like red, bad color. So toy I created first. I established, I do not have any relationship with the dog, so now I need to do that. So just answering to yourself, what kind of relationship are we going to have to our dogs this time? If you answered many to many privately, you are absolutely correct. And we're going to create another variable here, private list. Remember, do not use array list, use list, toy, and then toys. I'm going to go and import that class list. If you're asking yourself, what is list and what is the difference between a list and an array list? Well, because array list is a more specific version of list. List is a more general collection type. If you're ever wondering, like, what is that difference? That is that difference. All right, I came over here to that dog class, and now I'm going to associate dog with toy. But I want to have that many-to-many relationship, so I say many-to-many, and it's going to be many things, so I need to use a list there. So I say private list dog, I call it dogs. Awesome. Click import class, fantastic. Java util. There we go. We just set up a many-to-many relationship with our dogs and with our toys. Fantastic. All right, I'm gonna pause here. You've heard me talking a lot. Please talk to me, ask me questions. How's everybody doing out there? Oh, I just took away your unmuted privileges. How's everybody doing? Everybody good?
I have one thing.
So? Yeah, Andrew, what's up?
If there's a many-to-many relationships, does that mean you would have more than one relationship under many-to-many? Or you could potentially have many of them?
So when you say many, it typically means you're going to have a relationship to a lot of things. So if I have many-to-many relationship with many coffees, that means I have many coffees, and coffees have many people. So it means a lot. It means a collection of things. That's what the many word means. So you have a relationship with. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I guess I mean in this particular example, we only have like the lists. We only have the dog list in here, but there could potentially be more lists in the many-to-many.
So are you asking, can you have many-to-many relationships?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
That's normal.
You can have as many-to-many relationships as you want. You can also only have one-to-many relationships to get it confusing. But yes, you can have as many types of relationships as you want in your class, as long as you have a reason to have it.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
When we did the many-to-many, why is it not toy in the dogs class and dog in the toy class?
Because I was testing you, Hope. All right.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. I was like, what the heck is going on? No, you're absolutely right. It is toy and then toys. So our relationship in the dog class is with toys. So great conversation. Yeah, great question there. Good catch.
Well, you put toy in the toy class too instead of dog.
Did I?
Yeah.
Because Kyle's having that day. And I didn't even spell toys right.
Yeah.
Those dogs. There we go. Perfect. Great catch. Yeah. So if you're going to have a relationship with something else, it's best to put what you have the relationship of in that class. So great call out. Yep. Small mistype there. Well, actually, big mistype. Good catch. Anything else?
Hey, I guess I just want to clarify. Could you go back over to the dog class?
Absolutely can.
So could we potentially add another relationship on the one-to-one, like a dog to like food bowl? Could there be like a private food bowl?
Yeah, so what you do is you say one-to-one, and you say private food bowl, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
Just like that.
Okay.
And that's how you create
Okay.
a second one-to-one relationship. Of course, it's food bowl is red for anybody that's seeing this because we don't have a food bowl class, but yeah, that's how you'd set it up just as an arbitrary example. Does that help out, Andrew?
Yes, completely.
Awesome. Yep. You can also do it with many-to-many, one-to-many, many-to-one. Just make sure you always include that annotation over the class variable. Don't try to buddy it up like this. Like underneath that, you need to add the annotation if you're trying to build that relationship. Individual annotations for those relationships. Awesome. All right. Thank you for those questions. Awesome, awesome. Let's go ahead and run this. Make sure that I am still okay. There we go. Oh, nope, still not going. Come on. A little bit faster, please. Make sure that I'm covering the right stuff. Go. Awesome. All right, looks like we are all started. And then I'm gonna go and refresh this. And oh, not what I wanted. I need to go up here and press that refresh button. There we go. And now we see that we have a toy table, but also look and see that we have a toy dogs table. If we go ahead and click in here, we're gonna have two columns, one with toy ID and dogs ID there. So what this is doing is that it's gonna match up dog and toy IDs to those objects so we can build it later. So that's what we have there. Awesome. Any question on anything with this? Otherwise, we are going to continue on here. All right, let's hop back to this. And now that we know about many-to-many relationships, we need to know about the small burden that it comes with when we have these kinds of things. Let's go back to making our dogs. So in this case, actually, excuse me, we're going to be going ahead and adding a toy here. So we're going to add the toy. So if we just wanted to create a toy, we just put in that toy information, and then we press create. Now this is just an arbitrary thing. We'll try to get an example of the HTML actually there at the area in the class, but we are going to create an arbitrary toy name. We press create, and when we press create, it's an event. We send over a post over to the controller. Now the problem with this add toy example is that, okay, we have a toy, but we told our Hibernate, our database, we promised it a dog. Because remember, our toy relates to a dog. So in that case, not only do we have to send over toy to the controller, we also have to send its counterpart, a dog. We have to send over a package deal. Send over the dog and the toy information and package them together. How exactly do we do that? Well, we're going to be bringing in a new tool that we call a DTO, a data transfer object. What this thing does is that it packages up multiple objects together in order to send that over to the controller. So we can package up multiple models at once and then send it over to our controller. Otherwise, we'd have to make possibly multiple trips over the controller to let them know exactly what's going on. And instead, we're going to send over all of our information at once, but also keeping our models separate enough that the controller can tell them apart. So when we are actually adding the toy and we send over that toy information over to the controller with that post, not only do we have to send over the toy information, we also have to send over the dog information. So now, my friends, it is time for Kyle to code a little bit more to show us exactly what we're going to do with that. So let's go ahead and do that. In our data, what we're going to do is we're going to be creating today a part of our application that's going to allow us to create a toy, attach it to a dog, and send it over to our controller to work with, and aka send it over to our database too. So before anything, what I want to do is be able to create, be able to create that toy. So what I'm going to do is it said that I need to create that under the dog controller. I need to create a new get mapping to be able to create a toy. So what I did was I copied the get mapping above here, and I'm going to say instead of create dog, it's going to be create toy. Just because it's a dog toy, I'm creating the dog controller, just so I don't have to create an all new toy controller all over again. Again, this is Kyle's opinion. If you want to create a toy controller when you're doing this, go for it. Kyle's being lazy right now, doesn't want to create a new controller. We've already seen that enough. So I don't know what models I need yet, so I'm just going to remove that. And what I'm going to do here is that we're going to call it add-toy. That's going to be the part of the route. So it's going to be dogs/add toy. That's going to be our get mapping. And what I'm going to do is that I want to return dog/create-toy HTML. /toy HTML. But I don't have this created yet. So I've established my get mapping. Fantastic. Step 1 is done. Time to make the HTML. So what I'm going to do is come down here into dog, right click, say new, and go ahead and click on, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just do time leap. Why not? And we're going to call it, what did I say? It was create toy, right? Create toy. At any time, if any of you have any questions about what I'm doing, please stop me and ask. Happy to go over anything or more in depth with anything that I'm doing in this example. All right, everyone. So as always, Kyle made this mistake on the template years ago, but I'm gonna just put that back. God, I feel so old saying that. Been with LaunchCode forever. All right. Title, whatever, body, cats, we're gonna just take out that. And in here, what I wanna do is I want to have a form that allows me to add a dog. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Or I'm sorry, not add a dog, add a toy. Well, I know I've already done create HTML over here a bit, and I don't want to type out all of that again. I know I'm going to need the form, because where else do we create stuff? We always create stuff and send over post information in forms. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this form that I created a long time ago. And I also know this code works. It's always good to copy good code or code that you know is working. At least working in a fashion that you can work with. All right, so I brought over this form here. I don't want my action going to the dog/create anymore. I want it to go to add toy. So my action is actually going to be to add toy. Remember, action is saying, okay, where do you want to go in your controller? I want you to go to add toy. So we're going to go back over here to create toy. So we did that, but we're going to do a post. Now we're going to go add toy and we're going to do a post. So we only have a get mapping in here. So what I'm going to do is now create a post mapping. We'll go ahead and do that in a little bit. I want to at least have it there. Remember, that action is pointing to which controller you want to go to. And we said that the method was post. AKA, we need to now create a post mapping. So create that post mapping. Fantastic. And we're going to call it create toy. We're going to say create, well, technically it's create toy. We're going to say save a toy. I'm copying off this stuff we have down here. So we have that. We're just gonna leave it like this for just a moment, not touch it. Let's go back over here and complete our HTML. It's good to, if you remember you have to do something like, okay, I know I'm gonna have to create a controller or a post mapping, just put it in there, write a to-do or in comments or something like that and come back to it later. But just so you know your checklist of stuff, put it there while you have the moment. All right, so I see a dog name. I'm going to change this to toy name. I want it to be a toy name. And instead of dog, it's going to be toy. Instead of dog, it's going to be toy. And actually, it's toy name in our class, isn't it? So I'm going to say toy name. Nice. All right. Remember, if we're going to access it through time leap, we always have to have that getter and setter in order to do that. All right. So we have our name in there. I'm going to also say that I want that to be toy name too. Cool. All right. Toy name's there. Remember, in toy, we only have toy name there. We'll do this list of dogs here in a moment, but the big, like this, the low-hanging fruit, we got solved. ID's already gonna be set for us. We're golden. So I'm gonna take out dog age. I don't need to tell the age of my toy. And then we have owner down here. We actually don't want owner anymore. We're gonna want dog. Which dog do we want to attach this to? So instead of, so our name is gonna be dog ID here. the dog ID there. I'm going to say dog, which remember, this is an arbitrary variable name. I can change it to anything. I can have cookie dare, pizza, whatever I want. Over here is going to be the variable we're going to call to. I have to create a attribute passing over all the dogs. So I'm going to go over to dog controller and say I need to, in my get mapping, because that's where we build information, pass over list of dogs from database, DB for short. Fantastic. And over here, the value is going to be the dog ID, and the text is going to be the dog name. So we actually know who we're selecting. And then our submit button stays the same. Over here, make sure that there's nothing. Perfect. All right. So it looks like we are good on the HTML. We have what we're going to submit, the toy name, and the way they're going to select the dog that we want to attach the toy to. Cool. We're getting there. We're getting there. So our HTML will render okay, but right now if we ran it actually, we're going to get back an error saying, hey, you are missing some model attributes. Let's at least take a step. Let's run our server and see how we're doing this and see what the error would be if we got it back. It's going to take a second. And as it is loading up and starting the server, again, any questions out to you all? Everyone's like, nah, I know what you're doing.
Will you click over to controllers?
We got dog controller over here. We're gonna come back to it in a second, I promise.
Just snagging a picture, thank you.
Absolutely. Let's find, Kyle needs a, there we go. We go over here, localhost 8080/dog/add-toy. There we go. Oh no, we already got an error even coming to this. What it is a 500, which means that's server side. Something happened in our controller. If you get a 400, something happened in your time leaf. So 400 or 400 is a time leaf issue. 500 means there's something in your controller. 404 means you're missing a get mapping. All right, so I know it's somewhere in here, and let's see an error blah, 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 with templates. Error happened during template parsing, which means it couldn't do something. Let's see if I can find the exact line here. Yeah, no B name for toy available. When it says this, it means that you didn't give it a toy to render time leaf on. So over here in our code, we are trying to read from toy, but toy was never passed over from the controller. So like I said, 500 means there's a controller issue, meaning over in our controller, we need to pass over a toy so it can read it. Let's go and do that. Let's go over to dog controller and add toy. So now what we're going to do is that we need to add a model.add attribute. Say toy. And what we're going to be doing over here is passing over a new toy. Remember, when we have a form that we need to build an object like this, we need to pass it over a blank one. So it can build upon something. It's like passing over a blank canvas. And pass over that blank canvas so it can build upon it. All right. So there we go for that. And then down here, so we're going to be able to pass over that. But I also said I need to pass over the list of dogs from the database. So let's go ahead, and how can we get to the database? What do we use? We need to use the repository. What kind of repository? Well, I need a dogs. So I'm going to use the dog repository. So what I'm going to do is say model.add attribute, call it dogs. And I'm going to say dog repository, please find all my dogs. And it will pass me back a list of dogs to use. Awesome. So that is so simple to just say find all. And it's going to go over to the database and find all of our awesome dogs and return them back to us. So cool. That is looking a little bit more stable. Let's go ahead and stop, start. And we're going to see now at least if our page renders. If you're asking yourself, what are the true steps to go through when you're building all this, first get your page to show up. So we need to get all those errors out of the way, and then we can start working on the post, aka the post mapping. So start with your get mapping, and then post get mapping, post get mapping, work on the post mapping. That's really confusing. Start with get mapping, end with post mapping. All right, let's hop over here to add toy, press enter, and oh my gosh, it's here. Look at that. It's not pretty, but it's here. Look at this. We have our 3 dogs. We have Stark, Fido, and Pebbles. That's awesome. All right, we have our information coming in to show us stuff, but we still don't have anything happening when we press the create button. So we're gonna have to do that now. What we need to do is we need to come down here to the post mapping, and we need to actually start getting stuff into here when they press the create button. Remember, when you press this create button, it's gonna send a post request back over to the, dog controller as a post mapping, AKA it's gonna go right into here, and we need to capture all that information. So we're gonna be creating a toy, because we're on the add toy route, and we're gonna start with model attribute, and I didn't add any validation to the toy, so I'm not gonna include the @valid annotation. I'm gonna say toy and then toy. And then also we're gonna be sending over that dog ID that they chose in that little select, AKA right here. When we select one of these, it's gonna send back over that specific dog ID to attach. So what we're gonna do here is say int dog ID, and then we don't even need the errors at all either, because we didn't do any of that validation on this one. So right here, we're just going back a little bit more simple to the model attribute, toy, and then our int dog ID. Cool, we're getting there. Now, one thing we need to do is that we need to get both of the information. So we have our new toy, and now, and let me go and make sure I'm not missing anything on that side. Cool. So we need to have 2 objects for our DTO. It's starting to come up now. We're going to be working on our DTO, our data transfer object. And like we said, those are package deals. We're going to be sending back 2 things over to the database to do stuff with. We're going to have a toy that has a dog associated to it, and a toy with a dog associated with it. Actually got it right that time. So we need 2 objects. Luckily, we already have one of those objects, one of those 2. The toy comes back as a model attribute. So cool, we got the toy. We still need a dog. Kyle always needs a dog. So let's go ahead and create that dog. So we're gonna say dog equals dog repository dot find by ID. And then we're gonna pass it that dog ID. Now we're gonna pause here. Look at this red. What did I just do? This red is gonna say required type or required type is dog, provided was optional. What this is saying is that I did not put the protection I need around this call to help us survive, well, just the worst case scenario. Okay, our database not giving back the dog because the ID doesn't exist in the database. So to you all, what do I need to put around this dog when I'm calling to the database to keep moving forward?
Optional.
Optional, very good. I need to put around the optional. Very good. Just like that. So now we have our optional there. Now, when I get back this dog, how am I going to check to see if our vessel has something inside of it? What am I going to use? What tool? What method?
It is
Is
empty.
empty?
Very good, is empty. But what tool are we going to use around that method to check or ask a question? I need to check something. So what am I going to use with that is empty?
If.
If statement. Very good. So if dog, and what I'm going to call this is the dog optional, just so we know what it is as we're going through this example. So if dog optional is empty, I want to get the heck out of here because I do not want anything to blow up. So what I say is that I want you to return back to our original form, create toy, because that dog does not exist. Please try to select another one or something. In that case, we can pass back errors in our model add attribute. We can pass back errors saying that dog does not exist. But if the dog does exist, and we come down here, I want to add it to my toy. So I say toy, or I need to get my dog out of that optional. How do I get my dog from that optional? How do I use optional to receive the dog from the vessel?
Get.
Answer is yes, get. Awesome. Dog optional dot get. Remember, this gets it from, aka gets it from that vessel, from that optional. So fantastic. So awesome. We now have a toy and our dog. We have the two things that we need in order to create this DTO. But before we do that, we're gonna do one last step. We're gonna tell the dog about the toy and the toy about the dog. So that's what we're gonna do now. We need to actually relate them. So we say dog dot add, what is it? Get toys. Oh, do I not have a getter for it? I do not have a getter for it. So let's go up to the dog. I never created a getter for it. Oh no. Public get toys. Turn this dot get toys. There we go. So now it has that. Where are you being with that? Oh, because Kyle's in JavaScript mode. List toy. There we go. And also public list. Or public void set toys. I should just use the generator for this, but oh well. List, I'll do it for the next one. Toy. Awesome. And then toys. This dot toys equals toys. There we go. And semicolon would do better there. Cool. All right. And then vice versa. Let's go into toy, make sure we have that getter and setter. I did not. So what I'm going to do is come down here, right click, press generate. And I'm going to do getters and setters and for our dog. Perfect. There we go. And we have successfully now created our getters and setters for this. So let's hop back to our dog controller here and say, okay, in dog, I want you to get the toys that I have, which is the list. And then I can say dot add that toy that I want to add. So it's going to be toy up here. Cool. Now down here, I want to tell the toy about the dog. So I say toy dot get dogs dot add. I say dog. Cool. So I just related them. I just related them together. Cool. So what we have done so far is created an HTML page that we're able to add a toy. We had to include the toy name and the dog ID. That's passed back here to our post mapping. Then we find the dog in the dog repository with the dog ID, and it returns an optional. Remember, that optional is a vessel. We check if that vessel is empty. If it is empty, get the heck out of there. Come down here. If it is in the vessel, then we get it with .get. Once we have our toy and our dog, the two objects that need to be packaged together, we then relate them together in Java. But now it's time to relate them together in MySQL using Hibernate. In order to do that, we are going to start learning about those DTOs, or we're going to actually implement a DTO. So where we want to do this is we're going to want to do it in our data layer. And we actually are going to create a new package. This is our first DTO. So we're going to say package, and then we're going to call it DTOs. Or is it just DTO? Let's forget. Let's do that one. There we go. DTO, and what we're going to say is new Java class. And we're going to call this, I believe it's just, we're going to call it dog toy, which is the class name dog, class name toy together, and then say DTO. And press enter. Awesome. All right, this is the class where we need to package the two things together. In order to do this, we need to create a variable for each of the things we need to package up. The first thing is going to be a dog. So we say private dog, dog. Awesome. For class. For validation purposes, because I know that it is very important in, or it's also apparent in assignment 4. We're going to put not null here, just so that when we are doing validation on these DTOs, if we do them, we will just check that they're not null. So we say not null also, and we're going to include the other object that's going to be in this package deal. It's going to be private toy and then toy. Cool. So I'm doing on time. Awesome, awesome. That import class, and then we need the appropriate, or so after that we need the public and then the empty constructor. So we say empty dog toy DTO and open a close constructor. So just like we do our entities. And then finally the appropriate getters and setters, which is all of them because we do not have an ID in here. So we do dog and toy, press OK. And fantastic. All right. So this is how we create our DTO. This is what it's going to look like. Any questions about this? Any questions at all? Going once, going twice. All right. So for this, now what we're going to be able to do is that we can come into our dog controller and we can create a new DTO to send over to our database. So we say dog toy DTO called dog toy equals new dog toy DTO. We then can set dog toy, that's set dog, and then dog toy dot set toy, and then toy. There we go. Awesome, awesome. Make sure all good there. Oh, geez, that's right. So once we do that, then I believe our DTO is there. Okay. Forgot exactly what that portion is. I think I went the wrong route there. Okay. After that, one more thing that we need to set up is the toy repository real quick to actually communicate with the toy. So let's go and do that under data. So dot repository, paste that. Call it toy repository. There you go, press OK. There we go. Okay, we're all good there. And go ahead and go to doc controller, and we're going to create one more repository here. It's going to be that toy repository. Awesome. There we go. So we're all good there. So the last thing we need to do is come down here, and we'll talk about how to simplify this exactly. But toy repository dot save, and then we're going to give it the dog toy get toy. Oh, that's right, dog repository dot save dog toy dot get dog. There we go. And then why toy repository is red because I forgot to do one thing. Let's go up to our toy repository, and I forgot to switch out this right here. It's expecting a dog, but we actually need to expect a toy, and then we need to import it. Fantastic. Cool, cool, cool. And now our red is all gone. Awesome. So real quick, we're going to try to run our server on this, and then we will talk about our DTOs with our get mappings real quick. All right, almost there. Initializing and started, and let's go ahead and see what we get here. Refresh, we're gonna add our toy name. We're gonna say Chew Toy. Why not? And then we're gonna associate it with Fido. After that, we're gonna press create, and we get back 500. Let's see what the actual problem is. No point of exception. Doesn't really help out too much. No message available. Awesome. Let's go and see if I hopped over to the database. Go and see if that actually associated. It did not. So exactly where the null pointer would be. Toy. Oh, let me make sure with HTML. Add toy. All right, let's break it down then. Everything looks good. Dog controller, and what we're going to try to do is that we are just going to try to create the dog, or try to just create the toy without the dog first. Take it step by step, and I really want to get to that, otherwise we'll have to do it next week. All right, toy repository. Save entity is going to be toy. All right, save that, stop that. I chose to do toy first because that is the newest part of our application. So I want to see exactly if it's toy that's causing that null pointer error. So I chose to test that one out first. What it's going to do is it's going to eventually build back our server, and we're going to try to add that toy in there. Go, all started. I'm going to go back to add toy. Perfect. So what we're going to do is just add Chew Toy. Like that, press create, and it looks like that was a-okay. So let's go ahead and see if toy actually did it. There it is. Okay, so we have Chew Toy in there, but I don't believe it was associated with any dogs. So it looks like something's going on with our dog stuff. That's not good. Using annotation. Let's double check. I believe it should just come back. But let me double check the HTML real quick. So if it needed an annotation, why I'm saying that's a great suggestion is that we know from our from what we just saw that we made it at least down to line 55. If this needed an annotation, aka was coming back null, this would have returned nothing because we would have been passing find by ID as null, aka then this if statement would have been triggered because it would have been empty, and then we would have returned here, and we would have never saved to our toy repository. So by that, I would say that our dog ID is coming in because we did actually get to line 55, and this if statement was not triggered. So going towards that, I'm trying to take a look at that. If we do this get, we would add them together. Some breakpoints, right? I'm about to. So you know what? Let's go ahead and do it. Why not? We always wanted to do that. So toy. All right, let's go ahead and do it. We're gonna put one right there, one right there, right there, and we're gonna stop, and we're gonna go ahead and debug that. If we can't get in time, because I do gotta let you guys go in 5 minutes, we are just gonna pick this example up on Monday. But let's see if we can get it in time, because we still need to go over for get mapping. Which I'm bummed we don't get to do that. I was gonna have enough time. All right, starting up. Takes an extra few seconds whenever we start it from the debugger to get it going. Cool, there we go. Nope, I don't want to do that. No, thank you. All right, we're gonna go ahead and put in shoot toy. We have our Stark selected. We're gonna press create, and it's gonna pause right there. Excuse me. So our toy repository is gonna save the toy that we created. Let's go ahead and see what the toy looks like. We see that our shoe toy is that is the name, or sorry, toy name is Chew Toy, and Kyle sees what he did in his DTO, and he's being dumb. And I will show you exactly what's happening. Is that dogs is null. All right, dogs is null. What does that exactly mean? Okay, if we are over in the dog controller, I am now trying to get toys, or sorry, down here, I'm trying to get a list of dogs and then add my dog to it. I never initialized get dogs to anything. I never initialized to an empty list. So it's always gonna be null. If I try to call a method on a null, and I try to add to that, things are gonna blow up because nulls are nothing. They're a black hole. So TA Alex, thank you very much. Breakpoints save the day once again. So what we're gonna do there to help out with that is that we're gonna come over here and we're going to essentially in this empty constructor, we're gonna say this dot, no, I don't need to do that. I need to go into the dog class or the toy class, or both of them, honestly. So toys, new list. There we go. Yes, I know you're gonna be mad. So I didn't want to do that. Come on. I can't do that, so I'm gonna have to do a array list for this example. Got that, and then we're gonna go to, you know what? No, I refuse. We're not doing array list because that's just gonna cause a bunch of confusion. So taking that out. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build an array list right there in my DTO, and I'm gonna add it, or right there in my dog controller. So what I'm gonna do is that if dog.getToys equals null, and we're gonna just build a new one. Array list of dogs equals new array list of dogs. There we go. Dogs.add dog. And then in here, we're gonna say dog.set or toys. I know I have to switch that up. Toy.set dogs. Toy.get dogs. I don't know why I keep switching up my dogs and toys today. There we go. Else. There we go. Otherwise, don't do any of that. Toy get dogs. There we go. Oh, all right. And then last thing, we're gonna do the exact same thing in there. And then after that, we are going to have to part from each other, unfortunately. Toy, toys, 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 and then dog. There we go. Dog set toys, toys to add dog. Oh, because I need to add toy to that. There we go. All right. Set toys. All right, there we go. We have officially set that all. We're gonna take off those breakpoints, or we're gonna stop that. We're just gonna run it normally. We're not gonna do it with our stuff there, or with our debugger on. What we got? All right. All right, go back over here one more time. Add toy. Shoot toy. Now we're gonna do rope. Start Fido creates. All right, it looks like that one actually went through. So we're gonna come in here, refresh our stuff, requery this table, and we see that we have an association now between toy ID 6 and our dog ID 3. If we go to our toy table, we see that our toys are, for number 6 is our rope. And if we go to our dog, that is on 3 for Fido. So our connection was made properly for after the form. Right here, we are gonna have to stop, but what I do wanna show you for next time, and we're gonna pick up here, is that I wanna show you the DTOs for the get mappings, where we can add that actually to our templates and utilize them there. I apologize, we didn't get to there. So to make it up to you all, I will do a live studio review tomorrow, or sorry, a live, we don't even, technically we can't do the studio. Let me see what we got here. Possibly do the example. Let's see what we got. Do we have an example in this guy or no? All right. You know what, for that, I might not be able to do it for lecture. So I'm going to send out an event, but I'm going to just do the secondary recording for the second part of this that I'll just attach as part 2 to lecture 17, just because I don't want to keep you from your small groups for tonight. So with that, I'll send out exactly when I'm going to do that. As always, if you can't make it, I'm going to record it just so you can see the additional parts of this. And we're going to simplify a few things. But again, I apologize we don't have enough time to go through that, but it is very, very important to do the get mapping part portion for the DTO. So I'll show you that. Besides that, at least we got to see all of our DTO stuff. And also, if anyone's wondering, yes, we are finished on that. DTOs was the last thing. It's just very important because it's how we package up and how we can deal with multiple models at one time throughout our application. So I really, really don't want to rush it at the end of this lecture. I really want to just sit down and really explain as much as I can. So apologies for that, but luckily we got to learn a bunch of other things tonight. Remember your optionals. Remember how to pair together your relationships. And other than that, everyone, that is all I have for you. So thank you for bearing with me there on that live coding, which just like a live demo is always 50-50 if it actually works. But tonight, just like last night, I got that comment coming out. You all got to see I'm human. So I do make mistakes, use pencil a lot, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. So let me go ahead and